before, Michael, about nuclear weapons, and now Putin back against the wall, looking increasingly desperate. Could he consider using nuclear weapons?
Yeah, the Americans always worry about this. Trump, in a way, to his credit, always worries about this. He thinks that Putin is much closer to using a nuclear weapon than most other people think, and so he's quite nervous about that. It's one of the reasons that he fears him. I'm very sceptical about that. We talked about this many times. I don't think that nuclear use in Ukraine would make any big military difference unless several nuclear weapons were used. One nuclear weapon, even a big one, in such a big country, would not turn the military tide unless it was used purely as terror to drop it on Poltava or Kharkiv or something like that in order to kill as many civilians as possible. And Putin would then be the greatest war criminal of the 20th or 21st century. And I'm not sure that's a reputation that he would want. And even then, I think the world would turn so decisively against him and against Russia. Even the Chinese would pull the plug on him for that. This nuclear taboo, the taboo against nuclear weapons, is very strong, thankfully. It will wear off someday. But nobody wants to be the one to press the button, however desperate. So I'm very sceptical. And tactical nuclear weapons, again, there's no indication. The Russians talk about these things all the time. There's no indication that they've done anything about it. Now, security people would know if they saw anything. It'd take a couple of weeks for tactical nuclear weapons to be got ready. And no indication that anything has. I mean, what Putin does do, you see, he threatens nuclear issues all the time. He talks about Russian nuclear weapons, and every time something comes out in the West he doesn't like, he says, oh, well, this increases the danger of war, and of course war may be nuclear. He's found a way of frightening everybody by talking in nuclear terms. But when it comes to it, maybe I'm complacent, but I'm quite relaxed about that, because I don't think that any of the real thresholds could be crossed in this war that would make a difference. And if there were a military rationale that would make a difference, I'd take it more seriously. But I cannot find a military rationale that would put the Russians in a better position for using nuclear weapons.
As I asked you with sort of the Iran situation, can I get you to give me a broad thought about having a person like Putin with those weapons backed up against the wall, now sort of historical context as to how we've seen dictators, authoritarian leaders behave when they find themselves completely sort of surrounded and hemmed in and perhaps feeling like they have to do something that will turn the tide of war in their favour?
I can't think of examples of something quite as dramatic as that. I know what you mean, like a non-nuclear version of that. I can't think of those sort of examples, mainly because dictators, when they're hemmed in like that, don't quite realise it. Because they're surrounded by people who tell them what they want to hear. And then when the collapse comes, it's instant. Right. Suddenly, the Imperial Guard has gone. There's nobody around in the palace anymore. And suddenly there's nobody on the end of the phone.